Welcome to another episode of Latino Business Report. Today we're diving into a raw, unfiltered conversation with attorney and Texas State Representative Gene Wu from District 137 in Southwest Houston. Together we confront the issue of racism in America and how it is woven into our political landscape. Gene brings firsthand insights on how political racism has been weaponized in recent elections and discusses the powerful impact it is having in our country. So get ready, because we're not holding back. Let's jump into the deep end of this complex conversation. After you listen, I'd love to know your thoughts. You can reach out to me at latinobusinessreport.com or leave your comments on the platform you're tuning in from. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Latino Business Report. This podcast covers business, people, and issues of the day from a Latino perspective. The Latino Business Report is brought to you by TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. TAMAC is the leading Hispanic business organization in Texas since 1975. Now for your host, J.R. Gonzalez.
And welcome to another episode. Today's guest is Texas State Representative Gene Wu. Gene Wu hails from the southwest part of Houston and is doing a fantastic job, and got on my radar screen last legislative session watching some of the work he was doing. And here recently came across him again talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is the immigration issue. So Gene, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. I mean, we're just a week from Election Day, and I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I'm both excited and worried. The apprehension or the nervousness is how this election is going to turn out. However it turns out, I think there's going to be some big changes in this country either way. The reason I invited you on the podcast, Gene, is to talk about what I've heard you talk about a lot is just the whole immigration, or this anti-immigration sentiment that seems to be all over the country now, just not in the Southwest region, but the whole anti-immigration towards Latinos, towards Asians, towards Haitians, towards Puerto Ricans here as of late. What are your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, I mean, thanks so much, and thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate being able to talk about this stuff. And what I want to tell people is like, look, I think we look at this like this is a new thing, but the reality is anti-immigrant sentiments have been pretty pervasive throughout the history of our country. This is not a new thing. It's just been quieter in the past, maybe 20 years. But we've had these kind of thoughts and feelings for the entire history of our country. Like, we've used all sorts of immigrant groups as the scapegoat from the time that there were immigrants in this country, whether it was the Irish, whether it was Mexican Americans, whether now it's like Asians and Africans. People look for people to blame, and whatever group has the least amount of power, that's who gets it.
Right. I mean, it's odd. To me, I find it a little bit ironic in that we're talking about this anti-immigrant sentiment, but yet this country was founded by immigrants. I mean, everybody here, unless you're Native American, is pretty much an immigrant. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Those in power, and those in power do not tend to be people of color or recent arrivals. You have a lot of the European folks here, and that white. I don't want to say white privilege, but that.
No, it's worse than white privilege. It's white nationalism. It's the idea that America is really meant as a country for just white people, and people who firmly believe this, that what makes America great is that this is a place for white people to live. And their idea is that America wouldn't be as great if we let all those undesirable people get in. So when you hear things like America first, make America great again, we've done all those things. We have been down the road and used those terminology before, but the last time we used it, it was basically in support of the Nazis, right? And the problem is that we don't know our own history. We don't know the things that have been done in our name in the past. And so we look at these things and we say, what's wrong with you saying America first? It was like guys, these are old terms. We've used these terms many times before, and all for the reasons that we say we hate. right? But we're doing it again anyways.
Well, they say history repeats itself. The unfortunate part is if history does repeat itself, we're going to get in for a long haul. And the anti-immigrant attitude is one I think is getting worse and worse. And unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
No, absolutely. And what's really frightening, and I tell you, and I hate to make this all about Donald Trump because I know that's what he would want, but look, Donald Trump in the last couple of weeks and in his last rally started mentioning the Alien Enemies Act of 1789. And anybody who, there's no reason he should know what that is unless somebody specifically told him what that is, because only really lawyers should know that. This was the law that was used to justify the Japanese internments. This was the law that was used to send Japanese Americans, 2/3 of whom were American born citizens, to concentration camps in America. This was the law that allowed it to happen. And this law has never been officially overturned. It's never been officially repealed. The Supreme Court of the United States has never specifically said that this law is no longer constitutional. So this threat may not sound very serious to some people, but this is a declaration of war against immigrants, right? Against anybody who doesn't, who in their mind look American enough. And you can take a wild guess on who doesn't look American enough.
So that may be a little bit younger and not familiar with it. That mandatory internment of Japanese Americans occurred after Pearl Harbor, the kickoff of World War II. And with that, I mean, we're talking, as you said, we're talking well-established, respected pillars of the community, Japanese Americans who had built businesses that were definitely born here, but they were just rounded up and put into concentration camps.
And before anyone says, oh, well, it was World War II, on the other side of the country, while this was happening, only 10,000 Germans and Italian nationals were rounded up, right? 10,000 compared to the 120,000. The entire Japanese American community was rounded up. Even babies, children, infants, the elderly, people who were sick, even people who were half Japanese, who were quarter Japanese and denied that they were even Japanese, were all taken. And the question people really have to ask is, wait, why? Why take American citizens, right? Why take?
When they did this, what happened to their homes? What happened to their businesses?
And this question is perfect because we have today people who are talking like, oh, it's no big deal. I have money. I can protect myself. Well, so did the Japanese Americans back in World War II. They had wealth, they had power, they built farms and businesses and all these different things. It was all snatched from them. Everything that they have, every little tiny thing that they have, every bank account, every property, every home, every car was all taken. And many times people and many of the states and governments just gave it away. Whoever came to claim it first, it was theirs.
Wow. There's aspects of our American history that I'm very proud of and others that I'm not. This is one of the things that is not so exciting. The mandatory internment of Japanese Americans. We're also looking at not long after that, since this is the Latino Business Report, just the combination of what occurred later on is that during World War II, I'm sure you're familiar with it, was the Bracero program. But actually, the Bracero program, I think, started as early as the 1920s, where the United States and Mexico came to an agreement where Mexican men, and it was men, restricted to men only, were coming to the United States and working as labor to help with the agriculture, the farms, the roads and stuff, and especially during World War II, since so many of our young men were overseas fighting in Europe and in the South Pacific. So all these folks come over, and then when the war's over and everybody gets back, there's a realization, my God, we got too many Mexicans around here. We need to do something. So under President Eisenhower, a program was established. A federally state supported program was Operation Wetback, and that was actually the name, Operation Wetback, where they used military style tactics and went around rounding up anybody that looked Mexican. And the sad part of it is that in those roundups, I mean, some of these folks didn't know the difference between a Mexican national and a Mexican American or whatever.
Right.
So you had the same as you had U.S. citizens, U.S. born Mexican Americans that were loaded onto cattle cars, trains, planes, boats, whatever, and shipped into Mexico, and to the point where the U.S. government claims that 1.3 million people were actually rounded up in what to this point has been the largest mass immigration deportation, in history. They called it they were repatriating. What is that word?
Re-
Repatriation.
repatriating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
repatriating it. So it
Yeah.
sounded a little more cool, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's very Orwellian. Like find nice names to say for terrible things. Um, No, and what is frightening is that we're talking about the same thing again. And the response from the community is the same. It's like, oh, we're not worried. We're Americans. We're protected from this. Is like baby, it's never protected you. Being a citizen never protected the Japanese. When the time comes, when the politics are right, it will not protect you either. And I wish more and more people would wake up to this idea that our rights and our privileges don't just exist in a vacuum. They have to have people who are willing to defend it. They have to have people who are willing to fight it, because the moment you take your eye off the ball, the moment you relax, is the moment somebody comes and says, those rights look really nice. I like to. It'd be a shame somebody took it. You know, and
Yeah.
that's what's happening around the country right now. And so far for most of our communities, we're like, oh, it's just politics. No big deal. It's just politics. This is normal, right? And by the time people realize what's happening, it's too late,
It's too
man.
late.
It's
It's too
too
late.
late.
Gene, I like the point that you made that some people go, "Oh, this doesn't apply to me." I have money. I'm established in the community.
Yeah.
They're only going after those illegal folks that are crossing the border in the dead of night. They're only going after
Yep.
these folks. But you know what? Those folks quickly become inclusive of everybody by virtue of last name, color of skin, country
Yep.
of origin, or whatever. So to your point, I can see it. I mean, it's unfortunate. History does repeat itself. But what just baffles me is what I consider many folks that I've known for years, well educated, some people I've considered friends and still do to a certain degree. Some of the stuff that comes out of their mouth is this whole anti-immigrant type rhetoric that's going on is disturbing. And the
Yeah.
question,
And
go ahead.
no, and look, and I think I go back to my original point, where of we don't want to believe it. And time again, as I'm talking to people from around the country, especially about the alien land laws that are being passed around the country, people are just, they don't know how to react to it, because they're like, wait, I thought we were past this. I thought we were better than this. We're Americans. We don't do this anymore. And I hate to tell them, but like it never, those kind of thoughts and feelings about immigrants, about other races, they never really died. Those kind of like racist thoughts, they were just hiding. They were just kind of quiet because the time wasn't right for them. And the moment the time became right for them, they popped right back up. Those ideas that there are people who are just naturally inferior. Well, there's just something wrong with them, right? And and when it pops back up, we're like, we don't know what to do, because we're stunned by it. We're like, we're aghast. We're like, how can this happen?
Yeah,
And I don't know how it can happen, but I don't care.
it's
I
happening.
care that
It's
it's
happening.
happening, right? The
Right.
only thing that matters is, what are we going to do about it?
Well, this is a damn good question, Gene. What are we going to do about it? First of all, I'm just not sure some of these people actually realize how racist and bigoted they are. I mean, to them, it seems perfectly normal. It seems perfectly logical to pass some of these laws. Oh, we're just protecting our borders. Oh, we're just trying to protect this and that. But in the under that veil of protection, they're persecuting entire groups of people. I mean, they're just the whole thing with the Latino community, and I can speak to that a little bit more knowledgeable here. As far as the Latino community goes, which really gets under my skin, is this whole effort to deport and get people, Latinos or Hispanics, Mexican Americans, whatever you want to call them, out of the country, and especially here
Right.
in Texas, where we are, where this whole southwest part, this whole southwest region of the United States was once Mexico. We were here
Right.
first. Indigenous people, Mexicans were here. I often tell people, you've heard it quite often. My family never crossed the border crossed them, and it's true.
Right.
I can trace my family roots back to 1710 from Spain, Portugal, down into Mexico. Then they migrated up into northern Mexico and settled. And then after a war, it's kind of
Right.
ironic in that one day they're landowners and ranchers, and the next day they're cattle thieves and squatters, and
Right.
everything taken from them. So, point being is, I have a very difficult time in that with a country of immigrants, and especially with this anti-immigrant stuff we're seeing towards Haitians, Puerto Ricans, Latinos, and Asians. Where is it going to end? And for it to end, there has to be some sort of realization of that this is not right. But the question is, when are people going to realize that this is not right? Because a lot of these folks are brainwashed into thinking that they're being patriotic by throwing
Yeah.
everybody out that's not white.
And I can't answer for the bigots. I can't tell you what's in their mind. I mean, I can guess what's in their mind, but I think what will actually make this stop, what will actually end this, is a united call by all immigrant groups, by all communities, as this is no longer acceptable, right? We do this, we do and say the things that we say because we feel like it's within the bounds of what we can discuss and what we should discuss. But this idea that like things like America first, those kind of slogans and statements, people see nothing wrong with it because nobody tells them it's wrong.
Right.
Nobody tells them, hey, that's not an acceptable thing. Um, everybody supports Americans just because people love their immigrant background does not mean that they're any less American. They're not traitors of this country just because they're from somewhere else. And until our community pushes back on it and makes it politically unacceptable, then make it a career-ending move to talk about things like that, to talk about our communities like that, then it'll keep happening, right? Everything in politics is just a balancing of risk versus reward. And people attack our communities because they see plenty of reward in doing it and no risk. Well, why don't we give them some risk? Why don't we give them some cost by our community's actions?
But doing it in such a way that it's considered out. And there again, you have some communities that get really upset, and their risk is, and this is America. Everybody has the right to protest. But when those
Yeah.
protests turn into riots and you start burning stuff and people get injured and people die, that's to a point where it's a bit ridiculous. But it
Right.
also, Gene, I'm looking at, this is the United States of America. We all know how it was founded. We're all proud Americans. But as the leader of the free world, as the leading country in the world, for us to do this, and
Yes.
people and the rest of the world watching, I think it's unacceptable. I mean,
Yes.
we have crossed a line, and it's making it okay for other countries. Well, the United States is doing it, so we can go ahead and
Yes.
be bigots and assholes too to everybody. But the
No,
thing,
and you've really hit, like, this is a bit more advanced than most people are ready for, but that's exactly it. It's not just us. It's not just Americans. We are the beacon on the hill, right? We are the light for the rest of the world. We are supposed to be setting the example for everyone else when we do terrible things. In fact, we know that it happens because we watched it happen. You
yeah.
can watch people in other parts of the world, dictators and oppressive governments saying, "Look, we're treating you the same as America treats their people, right? And everybody wants to go to America. What's the difference? What's the big deal?" And so
Mhm.
there are secondary and tertiary consequences for all this stuff.
There is. I mean, in the the whole geopolitical environment out there, it's everybody's watching everybody, and we all have a responsibility to each other. Yes, American first. Yes, I'm an American, a proud American, but to be a proud American and want your country to do well doesn't mean you want to do bad or have somebody not do well. I mean, we are all combined. The supply chains, everything is so intertwined. The globe is small now, and that when one country sneezes, the other one coughs. We need to realize that. And to that point, as we're going along this path, it seems to be a path that people aren't thinking about. They're thinking of the short term and not the long term. Because, as Gene, you and I know, GOP convention, they were talking about one of the first things that's going to happen is mass deportation.
Yeah.
I mean, mass deportation, first of all, the cost of mass deportation. Second of all, a lot of folks aren't going to realize, well, if you were to get rid of all your immigrants, and they go, well, we just want the illegal ones gone. Okay, let's just say get all the folks that are by your standards here illegally. You're not going to have any roads built. You're not going to have food services. You're not going to have construction. The price of a house is going to skyrocket. The food is going to go even higher. As it is, the United States, for the first time, is having to import fruits and vegetables from other countries. We can grow it. We just don't have anybody to pick it. And right now, according to the United States Chamber of Commerce, that if every person looking for a job were to have a job, you still have 2.5 million job openings out there. We do not have an adequate workforce to meet our needs. Therefore, we need to bring in immigrants to do the jobs. And if we're in an anti-immigrant mode right now, what the hell? We're cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Yep. No, and this is the illogical nature of racism, right? Because we know how much immigrants contribute to this country, how much, especially Latino and Asian immigrants contribute to this country, where the country would be without those communities and without those populations. But yet we still push this. But why? I mean, look at the anti-Asian laws, right? They're looking at banning Chinese immigrants from being professors, from being researchers, ban them from medicine, ban them from technology, ban them from computing, ban them from all these different things in the name of national security.
Yeah, because all Asians are spies, right?
Right. No, and but look at the harm they would do this. And what would happen if all Asian people, all Chinese people were banned from, like, let's say, medicine or research, right? Think about what that cost would be to the rest of the country. And most people can understand that pretty easily, but they don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Because the hatred is more important. The idea that these undesirable people are in your country, that's more important. And what they don't, and the thing is, when we talk about things like America First, right? And this is a slogan that was popularized like during World War II, in the World War II era of when they're trying to keep the United States from fighting with Europe and from attacking Germany. They say, "Oh, America first. We should worry about America first."
It was that whole isolation type political thinking at the time. Let's not get involved in global conflicts.
But what they really meant is we don't care about other groups. Only things that affect white people matter, right? And it's frightening that we were going back to this era, going back to these things, and not even have any idea of what it meant in the past.
And it's making it more difficult with the banning of all these books and all these new restrictions on what you can actually teach young people today.
But that's why they're doing it. That's the intent. The idea is that if nobody teaches about the history, nobody teaches about racism, that then people won't be mad, right? You can't be mad about race. You can't be mad about racism if you don't know about it.
We'll just practice racism again and call it patriotism,
Right? No, but that is it though.
You're
that
right.
is the nature of what's happening.
And for listeners out there, please do not think at all that Representative Wu and myself, we're not anti-white. I mean, we're just using white as an example because that's the reality of it. You have the power structure as it is, and there's where a lot of this nationalism or this American first type stuff is coming from. As you look at
No,
it,
no, and you don't have to be anti. There's no need for it to be anti-white. You can recognize that there is objective white nationalism, white racism that exists. This is and to pretend that it doesn't exist, or to say like, well, we can't talk about it that way because white people will be mad about it. That's exactly why they're trying to ban books, right? When you have Donald Trump saying that, oh, well, these history books make white children feel bad, or whoever said that, that's the point. You're supposed to feel bad about racism. You're supposed to feel bad about slavery. You're supposed to feel bad about Operation Wetback,
yeah,
right? You're supposed to feel bad. You're supposed to feel guilty. But the fact, what they want to say that, oh, we can't talk about this because you're just attacking white people. Like we never said that white people were that all these bad things happen because of white people, but there are plenty of white people who want these things to happen.
and in the same respect, there are a lot of air quote white people that think and believe the same way as you and I, that
Yes, absolutely.
this is a nation of equality, and it is a
Right?
melting pot. And I think there's a lot of folks that are just scared of the fact. And to me, Jane, to me, it all comes down to economics. You have people that have been in power politically, financially, and as the minority populations are continuing to grow, especially here in Texas, it scares the hell out of folks. Because according to the last census, was it 2020 census, non-Hispanic whites, their birth rate of children has just dropped off the cliff. They are not
Right.
having children as much as they have. You see, when you start seeing the Hispanic population and the Asian population, as you know, and a lot of people don't realize, even though the Hispanic population is huge, Asian population per capita is growing even faster in this country than
Right.
the Hispanic population. So you put that
And
together, and with African American, I mean, Texas alone has been a majority state since 2014, but yet
yes,
it's not reflected in our legislature. It's not reflected in our forms
in
of
our
government.
policies.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's definitely not reflected in the decisions made by the government.
no,
So
no,
and sorry, I'm getting worked up over this.
no.
Um,
That's okay. It's my show. Get worked up. That's what we're here for.
and I think again, going back to my point at the beginning, is that there's so much of our community who kind of like they don't want to talk about this. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to have people mad at me. I don't want to have people thinking that like I don't want Republicans to call me say like I hate white people, right? You don't. It's not necessary um to to hate, but we can
No.
hate racism. We can hate intolerance. Those are not people, right? Nothing says white people have to be
Yeah,
racist,
I don't
right?
think we're not chastising or discriminating against the people. It's the behavior, it's the
Yeah.
practice, it's their actions. I mean, I don't despise, I don't dislike a certain group. I may dislike their actions or what they're doing, and there's a difference there.
Yeah.
There's a difference in that.
And there's plenty of racist people from other groups as well,
Yeah.
right? It's not limited to one group. It's just that in this country, it's one group that has had power for the entirety of the history of our country.
And even in our own minority groups, we have racism towards each other.
Yeah. And we have a lot of, one of the problems is we have people within our own communities who see nothing wrong with the racism that's out there. And that helps, and that gives like free reign for people to do worse. Because they support us, you know?
Yeah. One of the things, this country, the United States of America, we're less than 250 years old. I mean, we're just a babe compared to the centuries and centuries of some of these other countries have. And I tell people, in my mind, the United States of America is an experiment in democracy. As this experiment hits this crossroad, I'm curious, and I think these upcoming elections are going to give a good indication. Which direction are we going to go? Which
Yeah.
direction are we go? Because I mean, the thing that we know is a fair and equal system of government and democracy can virtually implode on itself. To your
Yes.
point, is if the lawmakers start making these laws, codifying these laws, and it becomes the law of the land. And as a friend of mine once said years ago, he says, "You know what? Just because a law doesn't mean it's right." I mean, slavery
Yes.
was a
Absolutely.
law, suffrage was a law, mandatory internment of Japanese Americans was a law. Just because it's a law doesn't mean the damn thing is right.
No,
But
that's absolutely correct.
but I feel we're going in that direction. Let's just come up with some absurd racism and bigotry, make laws, get them codified, do whatever you need to, and it's kind of like now this is the American way. That's nonsense.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point in that what we're looking at, and the reason you should be concerned about these laws is that every time we pass these laws, it makes an important point to the rest of the community. Every time you pass a law against Latinos, because in the guise of dealing with illegal immigration or whatever it is, you soften up the public. You put into the public's mind, there is something wrong with them. There is something inherently wrong with this community, and we have to deal with them. And over time, just like the Japanese incarceration, that if you do this for long enough, you will get the public into a place where they're more and more accepting of terrible things being done, right? And I think a great example is the most recent attacks in Texas uh, on the Latino community. We passed SB4 in the guise of dealing with the crisis of the border, right? What they did was they passed for the first time a state level criminal penalty, a felony for being undocumented,
Yeah.
right?
But yet,
And
on the other hand, there's federal laws that if you're here, and you're seeking asylum. I mean, there are ways to be in this country legally, but to your point, they were just let's just criminalize everybody that's here.
right.
Forget due process. Forget they're seeking asylum. Forget whatever circumstances. Let's just put them all in one category and deport them.
Well, and look at and during when we passed when they passed this bill, I had a debate with the one of the authors of the bill. I said, "Well, you're creating a criminal penalty. In criminal law, we have what's called probable cause. Like, what is the probable cause? The reason that an officer can stop you, detain you, ask you questions. What is the probable cause for an officer to say someone is undocumented?" And the response was, well, if you see like a guy wearing a backpack and walking on the street at night, that's probably enough. You think about what that statement actually says.
Okay, here's yeah, definitely. Here's one that I was talking to a friend of mine. She's an immigration attorney, and they have a case that they're watching. It was a DPS trooper who pulled over a guy, turned him over to ICE, incarceration, the whole bit. And he goes, "What was the probable cause for the stop?" He smelled like a Mexican.
Yep.
He smelled like a Mexican. He smelled like a Mexican. I go,
Yep.
okay. So the whole thing of rule of law and probable cause is really deteriorated.
Yeah.
Uh, and okay, SB4, that's
Yeah.
what that's being
That's
held
the
up,
law.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, it passed, but now it's being what?
It's been challenged in court. I mean, it's openly and aggressively unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and but
so but
they knew this. They knew this when they passed it.
yeah, it's kind of like a
They
test. To
didn't
me, it's
care.
like a test balloon. Test balloon. Let's see how much we can get away with. But
It's a racist dog whistle. It's a racist dog whistle. It's intended to appeal to the very, very worst of us. It's intended to appeal to the bigots, to the racists, and saying, look what great job we're doing for you. And,
yeah,
and I think the community we need a strong opposition to that. To say, like, no, 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 you're not going to turn our entire community into scapegoats, right?
and that
Immigration is a real problem, but this is not the way to solve it.
and I think Gene, you made a comment earlier that resonated with me. is for this to work, we're going to have to get a lot of these folks and start working together, because right now they're just attacking one group at a time,
Yes.
picking us off, separating, divide and conquer. But we're going to have that coalition of people of color, of immigrants getting together, and not just God. I'm not talking about new arrivals or immigrants coming for the. I mean, yes, they have a seat at the table because this is America. But for folks like your families, my families that have been here for a while, well, you haven't
Right.
even been here. You're not even from here, are you, Gene? I mean,
No, I was born in China.
you're born in
Right?
China.
I'm a first generation immigrant. Right. I can't be president, but my kids can.
Well, there you go. There you go. But and all you've done for as a statesman, all that you've done for your community, it just makes no sense how people still with a clean conscience discriminate against other folks. As
Yep.
we look at this whole discriminatory process that's going on, what gets me from a business standpoint is people aren't thinking that you get rid of all these immigrants, you get rid of this labor force, you get rid of these essential workers. You think grocery prices are high now? Jeez. I
Yep.
mean, just in the dairy industry, there's a real danger of no more milk being on the shelves. Forget the price, where
Yep.
milk will not show up on the shelves because they don't have anybody to work the dairy industry.
I mean, look at Florida. I mean, I think everyone's kind of forgotten because of the storms, but Florida passed that immigration law, right?
Yeah.
Basically saying like we're gonna check everybody. You can't work here. The yada yada yada. And look what's happening in Florida right now. Florida cannot. They can't really start the recovery process because there's no one to work. Right? Because they chased out all the migrant labor. A year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, like you talk about cutting off your nose to spite your face. How can it be any more than this? That you're willing to sacrifice the safety and well-being of your community to make a point and to show like immigrants what's up.
All right. Well, let me ask you this, Gene. It's immigrants that are bringing in drugs. They're bringing in fentanyl. They're criminals. They're raping our women. It's the immigrants that are spying and taking away our state
Yeah.
secrets. Uh, you know, the whole TikTok thing is just a Chinese ploy to get into and learn our secrets and everything so they can attack us later. What do you what do you say to people with that mentality?
Sometimes it's hard because a lot of times people believe what they want to believe, and sometimes there's just no way to dissuade them from believing crazy things. But look, um, we can't we can't make everyone understand. The objective should be like let's at least get our friends and family to get what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Let's at least protect. Let's at least get our own community ready to deal with stuff. We can't fix everyone, but let's at least deal with our own. And yeah, I mean, it's a hard question to answer of like
Yeah.
why, but I think it's a part of a conversation that we all need to have as a country. Like we've never really had an honest conversation about race, about immigration, about all these different things. And this is what's happened. It's kind of festered. And instead of dealing with it, we've ignored it. And this is where we are.
Yeah. No, I agree. And one of the things that people often forget too, it's just not one political party over the other. I mean, during Obama, I mean, one of the nicknames we had for Obama in the Latino community was it deporter in chief.
Yeah.
Under the Obama administration, over 3 million people were deported. I mean, he was one of the presidents that deported more people than anybody else in U.S.
Yep.
history. So he was pretty active about deportation. And I'm not saying we don't need to deport. We need strong borders. This whole nonsense of we have open borders and people are just flowing through here. That's nonsense. There are restrictions. There are border patrol. There are measurements put into play to restrict. But at the same time, if we were to have like a guest worker program, if we were to have programs in here that were
Yep.
sensible, that were smart, and we get both sides of the aisle, agreeing to let's fix the border instead of using it as political fodder. No, let's not fix it because it bodes well for us this campaign season. That's just ridiculous. Whether you're elected, once you're elected, it should be America first and not party first.
Yeah. And I think, their original version of America First is really about a veiled comment on racism and about exclusion. But what we should turn America First into is this idea that you put your country first and you put your society first and you put what's good for other people first.
When you put
Right.
society first, do it in a holistic fashion and not
Right.
being exclusive, not exclude certain segments of your society because
Yeah.
you don't like the way they look or the color of their skin or the sound of their last name.
Right. Exactly. Right. But you should, I mean, like, if you want to talk about America First, it should be about public service. You know who puts America first? Our teachers, our firefighters, our people, our soldiers who make sacrifices every day. But those soldiers also include immigrants. Those
Yeah.
teachers, those people who do those things every single day, they include immigrants and immigrants from places that people may not like, or they're currently bad mouthing.
And these
Right?
and overall, immigrants have contributed so much to the fabric of our society. I mean, it's just there. I mean, the accomplishments, the contributions immigrants have made, it goes on and on and on. But yet, people still want to be spiteful, still want to categorize and stereotype and put everybody in the same category.
And they always say, like, look, they always say, oh, we're just talking about the illegal ones. And I know they say that, but if you actually listen to them, well, which ones are the illegal ones? And like when JD Vance comes out and says, oh, we mean the Haitians too, even though the Haitians were here legally. The Haitians are here under TPS. It is a legal program that's existed for decades and decades.
Yeah.
And what they're really telling you is it's not really about the legality. It's about the race. It's about the wrong kind of people are here in their eyes. That's what they're really on about. And until our community is willing to see that for what it is, we're under this threat. Because these kind of things will never go away until we address it.
And you're absolutely right. This is a threat. This is a threat to every. It's a threat. I mean, not only every person of minority origin, but to every American. I mean, even if you're not minority, you're white, Anglo, Protestant, whatever, and you're sitting there and you may have all the money in the world, you may be financially doing fine, but when this thing starts taking over, and if our country starts going in that direction, the cost to live in this country is going to skyrocket. This is not going to be the same America as it was in the 1950s. It's going to be worse, and we're what's going to be developed is, I don't know what it's going to be, a hybrid of whatever, but I do not want to see that future for this country. And I know a lot of people agree with me, but there's some people that disagree and think that the way to solve all the problems, they'll just blame everything on a certain group of people. Let's just get rid of all the people of color, get all the minorities, get all people who don't look like us and think like us, and we'll be better off. That's never worked before. Why should it work again?
And it's kind of like the old greatest hits are making a comeback. All the old racist ideas that we thought were long gone are making a comeback now, and it's frightening.
It is. I mean, this last legislative session, I referred to DEI as educational McCarthyism.
Yeah. Exactly. No, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to find ways to keep you from saying it.
And we're going to pass laws to enforce that.
Yeah.
I mean, just a thought under SB4. A couple of weekends ago, I went to Home Depot and hired a couple guys to help me with the yard. I stopped by Bill Miller, got him some sandwiches, got him some cold water, I helped him with the yard. I paid them for their time, but under SB4, I probably committed 4 or 5 different felonies just doing that one act, of trying to clean up my yard so the HOA wouldn't write me up. So it's getting to a point where it's bad. And as far as, and we're almost out of time, Gene, but I want to thank you, Gene. and I'll send you my address where you can invoice me because this has been a great therapy session for me. I'm feeling better already, knowing we have lawmakers such as yourself that believe so strongly in this and are willing to stand up and speak up. Because some of them are just wimps. I mean, it's oh, I can't
Yeah.
say that because that's going to upset so and so. It's like just speak your mind. That's why you're elected to represent, not to sit there and calculate who you're going to piss off and who you're not going to piss off.
No,
But
and for me, really, like it's no longer an option. We don't have the option to be nice and to like sugarcoat everything and to pull our punches because the attacks on our community are not nice. They're not pulling their punches,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
we can't. Bullies have never gone away by us doing nothing. You don't get rid of a bully by doing nothing, right? You get rid of a bully by punching them in the nose and making sure that they know that there will be a cost. You can try again.
yeah.
You're welcome to try again, but we're telling you there will be a cost every single time.
You're gonna, yeah.
And
If
yeah,
you gotta give that bully a bloody nose, like you said, so they know there's a cost. There's gonna be consequences for their actions. And when they act in that manner, there's going to be a reaction, and it has to be
yeah,
uncomfortable. It has to hurt. It has to hurt. Um,
and that's what we need to keep doing. And the best way we can do this right now, go vote. Go vote.
absolutely, absolutely. And Gene, let me start wrapping it up on this note. Um, what people forget, and I don't know why, is that we're all alike. I mean, people of color. I mean, you may think they're from the other side of the world and they're completely different from you, but they're. I mean, once you get to know people, they're really not. As we had in a previous conversation. I mean, I love China. I love Chinese history. I've stood on the Great Wall of China 13 times, and as I befriend people over there and get to know them, I'm going, hell, take an egg roll and a burrito is really not that much difference. And come to find out, walking through some of your markets and some of your cities, I'm seeing a lot of the same foods and things that you guys eat that that
Yeah,
that Mexicans eat. I mean, it's the same
yeah.
damn
No,
thing.
I always have to make it a point to remind Latinos, remind especially Mexicans that Asian people love menudo. Um, and I know that, but because we have the same dish, we have
Yeah,
the same thing, but just different spices.
yeah.
And you know what? And I also say that it's a solidarity on being poor because poor people eat the same foods around the world. They just put different, they season it differently, right?
with some,
Because
with
when you're
some of those
poor, you don't
some
have
of
a
those
choice.
but some of those poor foods are really good. I mean, going through, I was in
Yeah,
Xi'an, China, going through a
yeah,
marketplace, and I saw these. I mean, they were like huge. I hadn't seen them that big before. Chicharrones. I mean,
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like, my, what the heck are chicharrones doing over here?
yeah.
But you're right. It's the same thing. A lot of the foods are the same. And my experience has been as far as the Latino or the Hispanic and the Chinese culture, there's a lot of similarities when it comes to family, when it comes to work ethic. There's just so much similarities, and if we were just to be able to start looking at where we're similar as a country instead of trying to point out where we're different, I think we'd be much better off. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna leave you with this last question, Gene, and then I know we got to go, and I really appreciate the time that you spent with me today on this podcast. But what's our next step besides voting? After the vote,
Yeah.
what do we have to do
So
next?
look, this is what I'm trying to do around the country. I'm traveling all over America, trying to talk to Asian communities and telling them, hey guys, the benefits that you have, the way that the reasons where you were able to be successful in this country and the rights that you have, those were paid for in blood. Those were paid for in blood by African Americans and others who fought during the civil rights era, and we earned those rights, and they earned those rights for us. But that doesn't mean that those rights are there forever. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean that you can take them for granted. And sometimes the tree of liberty needs to get watered, right? And and I'm telling Latinos, I'm telling Asians, I'm telling everybody, any immigrant community that's willing to listen, it's our turn to help this tree grow. It's our turn to create and protect the rights that we have. That these rights can go away if we don't fight for them. So let's go fight for them. And I want Asian communities around the nation to stand up. I want them to go to the state legislatures. I want them to go to Capitol Hill. I want them to demand rights. I want the Latino community to come in the same thing, and say, we can have a strong border without you making racist attacks on our community, right? You can recognize you can recognize that immigration needs a legal process, but also recognize the Latino community in this country, no matter how they got here, whether they were undocumented for 30 years before becoming a citizen, whatever it is, have, number one, they are human beings who deserve dignity and respect first. Number two, they have contributed immensely to this country, and to devalue them, to say that they did nothing, to say like we can get rid of them without any consequence, that is an insult of the highest order, right? And to strip away, trying to strip away their history and their humanity. And what I want us to do at the same is for our nation, for our communities to rise up and say no more. We will start giving you consequences. We will start adding a cost when you do this to us. And I think just for as Asians and Latinos at the same way. And
Yeah.
I know like the attacks on migrants are mainly directed at Central Americans, and there's plenty of people I talk to who say, "Oh, I'm Colombian, I don't care," or say, "Oh, I'm Mexican, I don't care," right? And there's plenty of Asians who say, "Oh, what they're doing right now is against the Chinese, we don't care," right? They only took the Japanese in World War II, we don't care.
Do they really think that a lot of these people can tell the difference between
Yeah,
between a Colombian, an El Salvadorian, or a Mexican? I mean, come on,
yeah.
we can't even
And
tell it.
they and that's the key, right? That's the exact key, that they believe that they will be okay if they just stay quiet and they just go along with it. They know in their hearts that that's not right. And they're pretending and they're wishful and they're like, "Oh, if I'm just quiet and I work hard and I go along with them, then I'll be safe."
Yeah.
You know what? There was a group in World War II in Germany called Jews for Hitler. They said the same thing, right? They said the exact same thing. If we just keep our mouths shut and we go along with it and we pretend that it's not us,
We'll
we'll
be
be
okay.
spared.
Yeah.
They were not spared. They went to the camps just like everyone else. And
Right.
the difference this time is we know how this movie ends. We know the history of the past. And the big difference this time, we can vote, we can organize, and we can fight back. And I hope we do it. I hope the Latino community, the Asian community, the African American community, we all stand up together and saying, your oppressors are our oppressors. We will fight this together.
We have to. We have to. That's the only way. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the only way. And it's not a we're going to win, they're going to lose. It's the only way to at least have some sort of respect and equality, and to be looked upon as equal Americans in this country, because I'm just getting tired of, depending on what part of the country I'm traveling in, to being questioned or looked at as a second-rate citizen, or people asking me if I have my papers with me or where I'm from. I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. It's absurd. But and Gene, on this note, and this is maybe for another day, but people have to start making the distinction between, you have migration, you have illegal immigration, you have border issues, you have trade and commerce, you have drugs, you have things. All these are separate issues that need to be addressed separately, instead of everybody putting them all together into one group and go, this is why we're having all these problems. No, it's not. Because by far, I mean, immigrant communities tend to have a lower crime rate than anybody else.
Much lower, significantly lower. And like all those people who put up those little memes and posters about what about these people killed by immigrants? What about the thousands of people killed by Americans in mass shootings? What about all
Oh
the
yeah,
children killed by
every
Americans?
week, every weekend in some of our major cities.
Texas is the mass shooting capital of the United States. Where are those posters? Why don't you care about those victims?
And I'm
Right?
hard pressed to believe somebody's going to pay a coyote, $15,000 to sneak him across. They have to walk across deserts, get here,
Exactly.
come to the United States, and the first thing they want to do, all they're going to do is stand in line and vote for and cast a vote in an election.
Yeah.
No, nobody's going to. I mean,
Insanity.
it's insane. And some of the stuff that I'm seeing on these, and last, but
I think the response is we're not as stupid as you think we are.
Yeah.
right?
Right. And
You're
these
stupid. Don't project that on us.
and these news networks, these so-called news networks, I mean, they're geared towards entertainment and
Yeah.
audiences. It's not actual news. They make up shit. So it's anyway. Gene, I've taken a lot of your time. I want to thank you very much. Any closing comments before I close out?
I Please go vote. Please go vote. Please go vote. Our democracy is depending on it. Our future is depending on it. That's it.
Absolutely. And when the session starts, I may be swinging by your office and we can see what else we can do. But definitely, let's see what we can do working together, bringing these minority communities together as one voice and take a stand and go, yeah, that's enough. Enough
Yep.
is enough.
Absolutely.
So, folks, this has been an exciting podcast, a little bit different from some of our others, but thank you for joining us. I'm your host, J.R. Gonzalez. You've been listening to the Latino Business Report. You can find all of our episodes. You can go to latinobusinessreport.com, find out more about the show, and get a list of all our episodes. We also have all our episodes listed on YouTube. So till then, and you can find us on any platform. Till then, keep tuning in. Give us a like, give us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Take care.